All right, y'all. Preds Power Hour, noon on a Friday. We have a full house here today. We've got the man, the myth, the legend, Bryan Bastin on the Forecheck, Renegade to Puck, just all over the place, doing great work covering the Nashville Predators, who everything's good. This is fine. The fire is burning all around, but this is fine. Everything is fine in Nashville. Is here as he is at this time every week. Bryan, good afternoon, sir. How are you?
A little tired. Was up late watching that Sharks Nashville, game last night, which was ended up being a little bit more entertaining than I thought it would be, at least towards the end. So not too bad though. I'm excited.
There you go, 6-2, nice win there. So it's always a better vibe when we're coming into Preds Power Hour, coming off a win. Also here, Jeff Middleton, who writes for, let me check my notes here, everywhere now. Jeff, good afternoon, sir. How are you?
I'm good. I'm tired, as Bryan said. Last night was up late, but we're doing well. We're ready.
There you go. The clutch thing is to record it and then watch 6:30 in the morning. Like when you're doing stuff and you're just like, hey, the first morning part of your day when you just watch and take your notes and your brain firing on all cylinders, like instead of the late night stuff. Like I do that with Brave stuff where it's like 1 a.m. in San Diego Padres Braves game. And I'm like, I don't have the mental capacity to keep up with what's happening anymore. I'm out. Also here, NHL on ESPN, the great Greg Wyshynski is back on the program after a couple months away. Greg, good afternoon, sir. How are you?
I'm good. I don't know why everybody's tired. I do mountainous amounts of cocaine. So, like, I mean, and again, like, I know that there's a lot of young writers out there that have expressed an admiration for my work, and some see me as a I don't say they idolize the career path I've taken. That's the secret. You've just got to do mountains of cocaine. And
makes sense.
And I got the good stuff when I was at All Star in South Florida. So we're
Well, it's also the topic du jour of the weekend because you know what comes out this weekend? Cocaine Bear, that I am absolutely going to see.
I'm seeing it too. Me and my boys we're packing in the car and we're going.
It's going to be an experience. Cocaine Bear 100% on Rotten Tomatoes out of the gate. I was like, oh, like as just like it's just going to be a delight. I cannot wait for Cocaine Bear.
I can't help but think about the Bruins, their retro logo, that bear that kind of gives me Cocaine Bear. Yeah.
Strong Cocaine Bear vibe.
Affectionately known as Meth Bear. I'm excited for it too. Like I thought for a little bit it was going to be a little Snakes on a Planey, but the trailer gives me hope. It's a real funny trailer, and I heard it's like really gory, which is what you really want out of this movie. So I have high hopes for it.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's walking into that theater expecting any drama or romance. So I think they're right where they're supposed to be.
See, that's not true. Did you guys know that Dame Judi Dench plays the bear?
It's true. I did not know. Wait, is that true?
Oh, of course not.
Oh, I was like, wait, what?
No, it's
hold on,
Chase, it's Maggie Smith. Come on.
I was gonna say, I was like, wait, what? Because Elizabeth Banks is the director, and I'm like, did she just do a bit where she put? I was like, okay, there is no bit there. Okay, Greg, that was too subtle. You got me at face value there. Well, we have some trade deadline stuff going on. The next week is going to be crazy. We talked about no sleep this week. It can only get worse, unfortunately, for Greg, Bryan, and Jeff over the next couple days. Maybe the Bruins just trade for everybody, though. And then it's easy. The Bruins are just like, we're going to go ahead and continue our assault on the rest of the NHL. Stop trying. We are going to win the Stanley Cup this year. It's done. In the Vince Carter mode. It's done after the slam dunk contest. Trade deadline lead up, though. Let's lay it out, Bryan. How would you want to lay this out for Greg and Jeff here on the program?
Oh yeah. So I think the two big names that are guests left on the board, the headliners, would be, guy that we didn't get to see last night in Timo Meier. And I, looked at what you had written just earlier this morning on ESPN.com. And the trade, the proposed trade, because I know that they've been working with New Jersey and there's a lot of interest back and forth. But do you think that's a deal that gets done? And do you think that return is going to be, good for San Jose going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I look, the Devils have been in talks with them for a while. I do think that other teams that have talked to San Jose, in particular Carolina, are a little bit more open-minded to maybe doing, getting Meier without the promise of a longer-term contract. Obviously, they'll have him for this year. Then they would have him for next year with that qualifying offer. But I think the Devils are in a different mindset. Like they want to get this guy and they want to sign him to a longer-term deal as a foundational piece of what they're building there, because their window's wide open. Like my God, like their two best young prospects, Luke Hughes and Simone Nemec, haven't even been in the NHL yet, right? So I mean,
Right.
like they are looking many years ahead. They think Meier fits a lot of the needs that they have insofar as like adding size up front. They love his age, so I think the Devils are really into it. But I think that they're only into it if they can get him on a longer term deal, from what I gather. And then the other part about it too is like obviously what are they going to give up? And Hughes and Nemec are off the table. I think they'd give up Alexander Holtz along with a first, and then maybe something else. There's been some talk and speculation about Dawson Mercer being in the deal. If that's the case, I don't know if the Devils will do that. I think they love Mercer as kind of a jack of all trades player that's currently really making an impact in their lineup. So we'll see where it goes. But from what I gather, they want mine, but they want for many years beyond the next two.
Right. Well, the other big story I think is Patrick Kane, and if he's ever going to get out of Chicago. New York has already made moves, and I think that's, by all reports, that's where he wanted to go. Do you think the Rangers can actually get that done, or is Patty Kane's going to remain in Chicago for the rest of the season?
Financially, the Rangers can get it done. I mean, they already started to kind of orchestrate or kind of signal what those moves are going to be with their scratches this week. And obviously Kane has an expressed interest in playing for the Rangers, and I don't know how many other teams he's that passionate about insofar as uprooting his life and going somewhere else. I mean, A, it's the Rangers, and B, it's a chance to, get reunited with Panarin. Like there's a lot of reasons why he wants the Rangers. What's interesting about if there's a match to be made here is one of the reasons sources around the Rangers were saying that they opted for Tarasenko instead of Kane was concerns about Kane's health. So, like, have the last 4 or 5 games put those concerns at ease because he scored like 7 goals? I don't know, but like that was definitely one of the reasons why the Rangers went in another direction. So, be curious to see what's changed in their purview to maybe pursue this now.
I was talking to Tad Bamford last week at Bleacher Nation, who covers the Blackhawks and been doing so for a long time. Like, the thing with Patrick Kane, like, they just have to be, like, there was no guarantee that it was, like, 50-50 that he gets moved because he's just been there for so long, like a 17, 18-year-old kid, and just his family's there, his kids there, go to school. Like, it's a huge, like, half his life has been in Chicago. And I think it's one of those tough conversations where I don't know. I wonder if he ultimately does get moved because it seems like it's not a big deal if he doesn't get moved to Patrick Kane. Like, I think obviously the rebuild's here. They're doing a full-on rebuild, whether they wanted to do it or not. Like, the Blackhawks are going to be bad for the next several years. I don't know. Like, we'll see his priorities, but it also makes it complicated, right, Jeff, to kind of move Patrick Kane because he is this, champion figure in Chicago who's just been there forever, been loyal to the city forever, that, like, do you really want to move? Like, there is some real, you want your guys to be on one team forever. Like, Preds fans want UC Saros to be a Pred forever. Or you look at certain guys, it's cool. Like Ovechkin being a Capital forever, Sidney Crosby being a Penguin. Like, there is real value to being that kind of leader and that kind of, or just like known figure who stayed with one team for your entirety of your career. I wonder how much that complicates his trade value. And like, the Rangers do make sense, but it's like, I don't know. What do you think, Jeff?
I mean, I think it's hard, like it's finding that balance. Sports is such a funny business because, as we've seen, even with the Preds, like Pecorino was a Pred forever. And it's just, you have to kind of find that balance because, like, I don't think it's that Patrick Kane doesn't want to be a Blackhawk. Like, I think, but what they're going through right now it's hard for everybody. Like, rebuilds, no matter how much Preds fans want them or fans around the around the league want them. They're very hard, especially on the people within the organization. Like no one wants to be in a rebuild for forever. And I'm sure if the Blackhawks got Connor Bedard, then he might feel a little bit differently, but that's not a guarantee. So, I think it's hard for, I think, any GM to trade guys that have sentimental value to the fans, just because at that point you're risking a lot more than just moving an asset, right? So you have to kind of figure out, one, what's best for the organization as a collective, such as, the fans, the ticket sales, the marketing, which players you're going to use to bring people in, selling jerseys, stuff like that. And then, but you also have to figure out what's best for the player and what they want, and what's best for the team, because teams also don't want guys that don't want to be there, right? So it is a lot of moving parts that if I were in that position, I would be, I don't know what, honestly, like, I don't think I could be there. It would be hard.
See, the one thing I've wondered, and I haven't seen a lot discussed, maybe just because I have the other part of it, overtakes it, but do the Rangers, is it the best move that they can make? Is Patrick Kane going to be the thing that pushes them over? I mean, he scored those 7 goals or however many it's been in the last few games, but I mean, he's well past his prime. And so is this a move that the Rangers make, that they really do think that he is that missing piece? I mean, I'd love to know. Go ahead.
I think they already made their move for the missing piece, which was Tarasenko. Like they needed a top 6 right wing. They got one. It would be a redundancy, but then it comes down to price. I mean, like if the package they sent for Tarasenko to St. Louis, if you can get Patrick Kane for not that, like, you might as well do it if you can fit him in financially and make yourself a better team. I mean, God, like, they'd be loaded, and there's something to be said for that. I mean, they're a very solid team. They're gonna go as far as their depth takes them. I mean, they're gonna need another great performance in the playoffs out of the kid line, for example, and those types of players. But I mean, adding Patrick Kane to the mix is not a bad idea if you can get him at a good price, and if you could not have to give up any huge future assets for him.
Especially when you have to compete against Boston in that Eastern Conference, and they're getting better too. So, any players help.
But we'll see ultimately what happens here with that. Greg, how about this? What do you think is the biggest trade that happens that no one's talking about yet? Who do you think it could be, a name, or do you think a team gets involved that takes a big swing that most people are not expecting?
I mean, they're being talked about, but not top of mind in the same way that like Meier and Kane and Chychrun are being talked about. But I wouldn't be it's crazy to me that Vancouver would make a big swing and trade Demko or trade Besser at the deadline. Like they've talked to a lot of teams about Besser. It's not come together. I have to imagine that you strike while the iron's hot and try to move one of these guys at the deadline if you can. I put together in our trades we'd like to see a story on ESPN today, a trade that would have ended up getting Demko on the Kings. I actually think there's a pretty good fit between those two teams. I know the Kings have an affinity for Demko, but it wouldn't shock me to see Garland, Demko, Besser, like one of those guys end up moving at the deadline, and really a team making a big splash because of it.
Interesting. What do you think, Jeff? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I mean, the Kings need a goalie, and so as much as I think Phoenix Copley has been good, he's not. I don't see him taking them to a Stanley Cup. And I think the Kings want to win that, and they're doing well this year. They're doing well enough for them to be buyers and to look at the goalie market, which is always kind of a weird sect of the trade deadline talk. And if things wanted to get really spicy, you could throw in a UC Saros at some point. But I think, honestly, a team that was talked about in Patrick Kane rumors, I think Dallas probably takes a big swing at somebody.
Hmm.
I think they're, there's not really a team that has separated themselves in the Western Conference yet from what I've seen. I think and Dallas and Winnipeg are kind of up there with their neck and neck at the top of the Central. And I think if, one of those two teams was going to take a big swing, I'd probably say it would be Dallas. So I'd probably look out for them to do something.
I see. That's funny. I disagree. I think of those two teams, I think Winnipeg takes a bigger swing. I think they see their window as being right now, given the age and contract status of some of their players. I mean, obviously, this is their last season with Dubois on the roster, most likely. I think that's a team that you could see, and they've done it before, like the Paul Stastny trade a few years ago, and Kevin Hayes. Like they've taken big swings before, and I can see them doing it again, knowing that the Western Conference is a little bit, like you said, up in the air.
Interesting. Last trade deadline thing here before we transition to Preds Power Hour here on the program. Greg, if you had to guess, what kind of sense do you have for what the Preds are going to do over the next week?
Your guess is as good as mine. I mean, like, I don't know how to read David Poile anymore. To be honest with you.
Yeah.
I don't know if he has a handle on what this team is. I don't know what he wants to do with the roster. It's a team built for now that doesn't seem like it's doing anything now, right? So it's I don't know if the trade deadline is really where a lot of moves can be made that are going to fundamentally change the makeup of this team. I mean, obviously there's going to be a huge amount of interest in Mattias Ekholm, but is it at the deadline? If you needed to move other guys, is it going to be at the deadline? I don't know. I mean, you could see them moving off some depth and supporting players to teams that are contending, but as far as the bigger swings to try to reshape this roster, I just don't know if you could do it at this point in the season. It seems much more like a summer project.
Interesting. Bryan, where do you want to go next in terms of the Preds?
So going back to, the two teams we saw last night, there was a report came out, I think yesterday, day before, that there was a little bit of discussion between San Jose and Nashville about Dante Fabbro. Now, I know a lot of people kind of had high expectations for Dante Fabbro and the path he took to get here. And I mean, a first round defenseman in Nashville has a lot of expectations put on him, but is that the kind of move that Nashville is more suited to make? And, you had said before, Greg, that that they want to be sellers, but they may not be able to be. Ekholm and Fabbro might be the only kind of guys that might be drawing interest. Is it important that Nashville moves something out in this? Because I think it's absolutely necessary, especially when you've lost a couple of players this season for absolutely nothing.
Yeah, no, I think anytime you can sell, you sell, right? And I guess there was what was it? Quinn coached him in college, right? That was the connection with Fabbro. So yeah. I mean, sure. I mean, it's the NHL. It's nepotism. I guess that's how you draw the conclusion that there could be a connection there. But again, like what's coming back the other way from San Jose is ultimately the question on that one.
Yeah, I think that's the thing is that I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say, if you can sell, then you should definitely sell, because that's something that I think we feel like we've had this discussion every year for the past 3 years. And in years where they should have probably looked towards that, and they went out and got Brian Boyle and Wayne Simmons. It seems like that Poile is close to admitting that it needs a rebuild, but he's like, no, just one more year, just one more. And so it's frustrating because now they've got guys locked up that they wanted to have locked up, and I don't think many people are going to disagree, that having Forsberg locked in is a good move, Roman Josi, things like that. But, there's a lot of those, David Poile being a guy who was really, adverse to giving, no trade clauses, no movement clauses. Now he's given those out, and they've got guys with long-term deals like Johansson and Forsberg, Josi. I mean, McDonough, they still got time on McDonough. So, the way this team is built, the moves that they've made, their major losses have been young players. So, I mean, it seems to me that the general direction is that Poile's not ready to give up on this team succeeding, but I'm not seeing anything on the ice that should be convincing of that. I mean, Jeff, I think that you would agree, most of all, that it's what needs to be done now, but now I don't think Nashville is in the place to do it.
Yeah, I mean, from an outside perspective, obviously it's frustrating because you have guys that could be sold off. Like I think Nino Niederreiter would be a great piece for a contender to pick up. And I think that the Preds, given what's happened on the trade market so far, I think the Preds could get a decent haul for him. But if I'm David Poile, I'm also thinking, he hasn't won a Stanley Cup. He doesn't, like, if he starts this rebuild, then it's over for him. Like that's when his general managing career is done, because frankly he doesn't have much time in the general manager seat left. And it's I think it would have to be hard to admit when it is over. So from that point of view, I'm like, I try to be a little understanding as to why he's doing what he does, but from a this needs to end now, this is not working standpoint, like he's not doing what's in the best interest of the Predators at this current time, right? So like, he's not. I read somewhere that he was talking with Jeannot. Talks had started with Jeannot about a long-term extension, and I was kind of like, what? Why would I love Tanner Jeannot, but he's clear. There's been interest in him, and we've heard that there's been interest in him, and you're 7 points out of the wild card spot, like, and you have 2 or 3 games left before the deadline. So it's not. They're not going to become a playoff team against a team. I think I tweeted this out last night. It was like, it's really frustrating when a 3-game series against Minnesota, or Boston, Florida, and Minnesota is the defining, quote unquote, kind of sect of the season for where the Preds are going to be for the future. And then a week later, it's, we've got Arizona, San Jose, and Vancouver, and that's where it's really going to happen. Like those are teams in way different places. Like you're not going to be competing with those last 3 teams for a playoff spot. So I don't know. I think I understand why David Poile doesn't want to kind of admit that it's over, because when it's over. But best interest of the franchise, it's hard to kind of wrap my head around some of the stuff that's been said recently.
It's been hard for you to wrap your head around a lot of stuff.
A lot,
you
yeah.
watched a man throw a catfish on the ice while a game was going on. You saw that in person, Jeff.
I wasn't there.
You just had the picture. You just shared the picture. Oh, I thought you were there for that. Okay.
No, I've been. I saw a video of it on it. It was a TikTok video that went viral too. So yeah, it was not great. Not great.
Greg, true or false? Barry Trotz is the head coach of the Nashville Predators at this time next year.
I'll go false. I think he'll be the GM.
Interesting.
I mean, I don't know. Like, he doesn't have any experience in that player personnel capacity, but I don't know if coaching is coaching really where Trotz wants to be at this point in his career. Maybe he just wants to be someone who joins the Nashville organization in a, hockey operations capacity and goes from there. Who's to say?
I mean, I do have to ask, Greg, you talk about, he doesn't have any experience as a GM. When has that stopped anybody in the NHL?
I mean, it hasn't, but I mean, unless I'm wrong, like, I don't even think he's got any experience. Like, even a guy like Sakic or Yzerman, they were in the organization in different capacities in player personnel, and then they became GMs. So I don't know. That's why, like a president role would be interesting for him. But again, the issue for that is that, Poile won't ever get fired. He'll just get kicked upstairs. And so whatever sort of honorarium role you want to give Trotz would probably have to be below that. So who knows? But, I mean, listen, I don't think it – I think there'd be a lot of interest and a lot of comfort for Barry Trotz to coach the Predators again next season, but I don't necessarily know if it's the best thing for the Predators.
I would agree with that.
I would also agree, yeah.
I'm going to guess it's like a triumvirate where it's like it's the Poiles, the combined Poile family, the Poile dynasty, and then Barry Trotz are all in there. Like, it's just and I think a part of it too is like we don't know what kind of relationship Barry Trotz has with Haslam. Like, that's going to be another big part of this is like the relationship building and who he already has connections with that we don't know about, and that's just it's a big part of, it's an under talked about part of every sports organization, is like the relationships with the owner and like what kind of private relationships are and what they're like in interviews and things like that. We don't know, but we just know that, like you said, Jeff, and I think you hit the nail on the head with Poyle. It's just for him, he's like, why would I sign up for a rebuild? Why would I be a gigantic seller at the deadline? Like, if I do that, then I might as well retire, because I'm not gonna be around on the flip side. But I mean, on the other side, you're like, well, do you want to set your son up for that combination? I don't know. It's just that's kind of a depressing, like, short-term outlook here.
I know you were kidding around about, the Poyles. I mean, but there's been talk about, his son succeeding him. But I mean, honestly, that's the path. If you're going down a path of you want to go back and go get one of your former coaches, and you're going to go and you're going to keep, the GM, you're going to keep Poyle in the building and have Trotz and things like that. I mean, it seems a lot like how you get yourself in a position that Chicago is in, where, you try to grab those old players to see if you can just get it one more time, and then all of a sudden you're kind of set back this far, So I'm really hoping that things do, if they make the moves to change the GM, head coach, whatever, that they bring in somebody that's, outside the organization, something that's new that we can, rebuild with, because I think what's going on in Nashville now has been very successful over the last 6 to 7 years. No one could argue that, but it's that formula isn't about, that's not going to win going forward, I don't think.
Interesting. Bryan, injury front. You wanted to form this question based on whether or not, like, if we could have turned injuries off before this year and how that would have shaped how we saw the Preds. How do you want to pivot this for Greg?
Yeah. I mean, because before Forsberg and Johansson, I mean, Nashville, I think, was like the third or fourth most healthy team in the season in the league. I think Borowiecki has been the long-term, loss, but I think, if you look at like stats and stuff like that, I think his absence actually made them a little bit better. And nothing against him, but so if injuries aren't, an issue that, they can point their finger at and say, if this team had been healthy, they'd be better. They still have fantastic goaltending. This team is on paper should be upgraded from last year. I mean, you add McDonough, you add Niederreiter, you get rid of a guy like Luke Cunnin and Matt Benning, stuff like that. And you've got Saros back to form, playing like a top 5, top 3 goaltender. What is it that's going on with this team, in your opinion, Greg, where it's just not working?
I couldn't tell you. I mean, the mix just didn't come together. And, there are pieces there that you could still build around, obviously, like Josi and Saros and players like that. But, it just, you piece it together. You see inklings of what it could be last season, and then it just doesn't come together in a, pretty competitive division.
What about you, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot of things. I think it's regression from the top players. I think Tanner Jeannot not scoring 20 goals has not helped. I think Mikael Granlund having one of the worst seasons I think he's ever had is not helping. I think coaching is not good. I don't want to place all of the blame on coaching, because some of it does have to do with just statistical stuff. It's just, they're a weird team. Like, because like Bryan said, they're a better team, I think, on paper than what they were last year. But I don't know if I've written about this. I'm sure I have. But the problem is they might be a little better on paper, but that's not going to account for losing, probably 30 goals from Duchesne and Forsberg alone. Like, they're not going to both be 40 goal scorers again. And Roman Josi's not going to score 94 points, which was absurd still. It's just, I think a lot of it has to do with, statistical regression from the top guys, and even down years from guys that, like, it's not even just regression anymore. They're just playing really bad this year. That would probably be what I would point to. And, coaching and roster decisions have also played a part in that.
Interesting. Bryan, what does the Johansson injury mean for how the Preds approach the next week?
I mean, I think we've heard Johansson's name come up, over the past few years as being a piece that could go out in a trade. But I think that's been a lot of Nashville's been asking around and nobody's been kind of willing. And before last year, I could see definitely why. I think he kind of he bounced back from, becoming a playmaking type of center rather than the scorer. And, 26 goals for a top line center, on a competitive team, that's not necessarily, what you want, but it's a little bit better. But I don't think, I think there was a very slim chance that he would move. But I think now that he's injured, I don't know that he's going to be going anywhere. So,
yeah, I wonder, they're going to do something. I just don't think it's going to be any major fireworks. I don't think it's going to be like we're going full out. UC Saros is out. We're getting a king's ransom for UC, like Forsberg, whoever. It just doesn't feel like that's where they're headed. I think they want to make the playoffs.
I will say this. I think if they do something, my money is going to be that they make a bunch of small things to get some help down in Milwaukee, because I think like 5 or 6 players or last night were in the lineup were guys who had spent significant time in Milwaukee this season. So, I think that's going to be definitely, I don't think fans, when you start to see these trades happen, because it happens every couple of years, that, you'll see these AHL trades come in and you're like, oh my God, what are they doing? Granted, I also said that about the Ben Harper trade, and look what happened there. So, I think you're going to see that, because there's a lot of admirals up in Nashville right now, and they're a good team, and you don't want to pull that team out in front of a guy like Askarov, who's having a pretty good year. So,
yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
I also think that it's just Brian's right. Like, I think the trades are going to be smaller. I think it's not going to be anything big. But if I'm the fans right now, and from what I've obviously read all over Preds Twitter, is like, and what I think is probably in the best interest is starting small. Like, obviously, you're not trading Ryan Johansson or Matt Duchene this trade deadline. Like, it's not happening. Their contracts are too big, and that Johansson's hurt. But it's someone has, like, you have to kind of get the ball rolling in some way. Like, I don't think I'm not expecting some giant trade. Like, I'm not expecting a Matthias Ekholm trade, but a Tanner Jeannot trade. Now, I would expect that. Like, I would say, considering what he's doing this year and considering what he did last year, there is still value there, and contenders clearly want him. The Rangers have expressed interest in him. Why would you not do that? And so it's less for me about seeing these giant trades going down, and more about seeing trades where I'm like, okay, we're headed in the right direction.
Yeah. I want them to rip the Band-Aid off, and I think that's what most fans are at. And I think Poyle is in this ownership group is misreading the room if they go the other way. If they think the playoffs is going to get this fan base energized, like making an 8 seed, 7 seed, I just don't think it's going to go well there. I don't think they're going to get the reaction that they're hoping. And I wonder if they're considering that in moves of just like what the fans actually want to do here. Because I think y'all could attest this better than me. I feel like the majority of fans want them to be sellers and significant sellers at the deadline. And I just wonder if that clash between what Poyle wants and what the fans want is going to be something that should be interesting to monitor, right?
Yeah, I mean, 2 things about that. One is, and then, Jeff talked about this earlier too, is that Nashville, it's going to be difficult, and we're seeing the arena get less and less filled. I mean, people were kind of embarrassed to get with Bastin. Now Boston's like the best team in the NHL. They travel well. I mean, but we haven't seen that in Bridgestone in a while. And one of the things that Poyle has to think about, and maybe why the owners aren't making a move, is that a rebuilding team, even if the fans want it, they're not going to sell as many seats. And so that's got to be rough, especially coming out of these COVID years, and the cap going up, in the future. So that's part of it. And 2, the other thing I did want to mention, because I saw this morning, I'm very glad that Ryan Johansson, was able to get out of that surgery, and we kind of have pushed that kind of off the cycle, as far as, because what that could have been was awful. Because I think they said just this morning that he was wearing like a cut resistant sock.
Yeah, it was a protective sock.
So it could have been much worse. I mean, he went immediately to surgery too. So I mean, that sock may have been the difference between us talking about, well, is Johansson going to, Johansson will be back next season, or is Johansson done with hockey? So I mean, I did want to make that note that I'm incredibly thankful that it worked out the way it did, and he was able to recover, and he sent a big box of $5 to his surgeon. So and that's a pro move. I have to give it to him. That's an absolutely pro move right there. So I'm glad to hear that he's okay. I just wanted to make sure we got that out there, because we were a little worried about that, when it happened, and then we got good news fast, and so that was pretty thankful for that.
Well, there you go. As we look ahead, we'll end here, guys. Jeff, what are you looking for out of the Preds over the next week before the next Preds Power
Hour? I'm expecting a tight game against Arizona. Probably a loss to Pittsburgh, although they did get killed by Edmonton last night, and there were fire Hextall chants going. So that was crazy.
The fans want to completely blow it up. They were like, the only one who's safe is like Mike Sullivan. It seems like everybody else is just, they want a full tear down.
Yeah. I don't mean, see, the problem with that is you can't really tear it down when you have Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, and Chris Letang. But, and then probably, honestly, that Florida game right before the deadline, that's going to be a weird one, because I don't think Florida's going to come in and do this. They're not going to play the same way they did. And their 7-goal loss 7-3 loss to the Preds. So a lot more of up and down. The Coyotes have been good at home recently. So that'll be an interesting one. First time we get to see Mullet Arena, and first time Preds fans get to watch it, watch a game there. And lots of up and down. I'm hoping that they'll sell off some pieces, but who knows anymore?
Yeah. Give me one name. You and Bryan, give me one name that you think gets moved. Most likely, in your opinion.
That I think gets moved? That's a tough one. Tanner Jeannot, probably just because his name's been out there more, I think would probably be my guess. I mean, Dante Fabbro is a good one too. I'm going to go Dante Fabbro, just because with the Preds doing the extension talk thingy with that was reported or whatever, I'm gonna switch to Dante Fabbro.
Okay. What about you, Bryan?
I think Dante Fabbro is one that I think is probably pretty realistic. I think if there's one that's even, I think Mattias Ekholm, I think would be, I hate to see it. I really, really like Mattias Ekholm, and I think he's the guy that I think, if besides Nashville, he's a guy that teams can kind of build their blue line around. And I think that he is going to represent, $6 million plus off the board. He's got a few years left on his contract, and I mean, it's going to be, you still have talent at the position, and you've got young talent too. That's fine. It's not like, losing Ekholm isn't going to make this team's defense much worse than it actually is right now anyways. I mean, I know they're like 28th, 27th. But that's a move that makes sense, and that's one that you can make, and you still keep a lot of your guys, some of your core. You probably won't have to retain on him, and you can get a decent return, but you free up and give yourself more options for the future. And I think that's probably the one. If it's not Fabbro, it's probably Ekholm.
I like it. Jeff, what can the good folks check out from you across the internet this week?
So yesterday I announced a move. So I'm actually, along with on the Forecheck, I'll be occasionally writing pieces there. I announced a move to Flames Nation, the Nation Network. So I'm going to be writing about the Flames now. So that's exciting. And Renegades of Puck, I'll be doing some stuff there too.
Awesome. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you.
Also, Bryan over at Renegades of Puck and on the Forecheck. What can the good folks check out from you and the team over there this week?
Yeah. Quick note. Greg just messaged me. He had a important call that he absolutely had to take. So he apologizes for having to drop out, but he he said, he was glad to be here. But actually, yeah, one of the reasons I'm tired is that instead of going to bed as soon as the horn went off last night, I recorded for Renegades of Puck a thing, and then also did a podcast with the guys over at Locked On Sharks. So that was a lot of fun. I did not go to bed until about 3:30 and then got up at about 6:30. So it's been a whole day.
Get a nap in today, Bryan.
Oh, don't worry. I really would like to ask that nobody bother me tonight. So, but it's good. We've got the deadline coming up. There are talks about something in the works for deadline day in terms of, some soon to be SB Nation alumni. Just going to put maybe a little something together during the day of. So keep your eye out for that. Speaking of, that'll probably be why, things will be, we're going to probably record after the deadline on Friday, correct?
We are. We're going to do it after either Saturday morning or Friday night. Yeah.
That'll be good. So we'll do that. But the next week's going to be busy. Hopefully it's the good kind of busy. Mm-hmm. And, it's the kind that we go like we did with PK Subban a few years back, at the draft. And you're like, oh, I can't believe they did this. And then looking back, you're like, yeah, all right, that's fine. Okay, I see. But hopefully it's that kind of week. And so I'm looking forward to it. The season's technically not over. They've got a pretty easy stretch of 10 games coming up. So maybe we'll get to watch some enjoyable hockey before that last stretch of just absolute murder happens at the end of the year.
There you go. Bryan Bastin, Jeff Middleton, always a pleasure. And I will talk to y'all next week.